Hello chess friends and welcome back to the channel. I'd like to show you another game from round 7 of the Norway chess. A beautiful game full of blunders that it's worth our attention. Caruana with the white pieces against Anand with black. It's a long game, so let's get started. Caruana opens with e4 and Anand answers with e5. Knight to f3, knight to c6 and bishop to b5 the Ruy Lopez. a6, bishop to a4, knight to f6, the Murphy defense, and short castle for white. Knight captures on e4, the most played move is bishop to e7. Here comes d4 by Caruana. This is the main line, the only good alternative is rook to e1. b5, bishop back to b3, now d5, protecting the knight and also closing this diagonal for the bishop. D captures on e5, now the bishop and the queen against the d5 pawn, so bishop to e6 to protect the pawn, and bishop to e3. Bishop to e7, c3 now, short castle for Anand, and knight in b goes to d2. Bishop to g4, pinning the knight. Here comes rook to e1, still 3 games in my database. In this position Anand plays a novelty. Knight captures on d2, but probably this is not the best move. Let's go back. Knight captures on e5 looks stronger. Here comes knight captures on e4. Of course, not d captures on e4 because this move loses the game on the spot. In fact, the queen captures on d8. This knight is under attack. Knight captures on f3 with check doesn't solve the problem because the g-pawn recaptures on f3. Black must recapture the queen and the bishop is lost. So after knight captures on e4, here comes bishop captures on f3, this is the best continuation. G captures, now d captures on e4 and f captures on e4 with an equal game. Let's go back to our game. After rook to e1, Anand continues with knight captures on d2 and bishop recaptures on d2 solves two problems in one, because the knight is still with the protection of the queen and now the rook is protecting the e5 pawn. Queen to d7, h3 against the bishop, bishop to h5, and here comes a4. b4, a good move, a5, and b captures on c3. This is just a little inaccuracy. Going back one move, much better is to play rook in a goes to b8, indirectly attacking the bishop, and when the bishop will move to a4 or to c2, then b captures on c3 is a bit better than before. Let's go back to our game. B captures on c3 and the bishop recaptures on c3. Now black has a problem to solve. So what rook to move to d8 to protect the queen and the d5 pawn? Capablanca once said that choosing the right rook is one of the most difficult problems to solve during a game. Because the b file is semi-open, Anand chooses the rook on f8. Rook in f goes to d8 and of course Stockfish prefers the other rook. Anyway, rook to c1. In this position, bishop captures on f3. This is a strategic mistake because losing the bishop pair in this position without compensation will give white a great advantage. With the queen that recaptures on f3, we can notice that the queen is watching two important squares. Black also can't advance the d-pawn or he is completely lost. The knight moves back to a7 and here comes bishop to c2. This is the first of many missed opportunities by Caruana. Let's go back one move. After knight to a7, e6 is the strong move. F captures on e6. Now queen to g4 with the threat of checkmating one on g7 and also attacking a second time e6. Bishop to f8 protecting the checkmate threat. Here comes rook captures on e6 and it's +3. Okay, let's go back to our game. After bishop to c2, here comes g6, protecting probably this idea, but e6 is still on the cards. Let's watch. e6 now, f capture, now bishop captures on g6, h capture. queen to g4, and there is the same big problem. So instead, Caruana doesn't play e6. He plays queen to g3, queen to e6 now, blocking the e-pawn advance, bishop to d1 and d4. Bishop to d2, c5 now a good move, bishop to g4 against the queen, and the queen moves to a2 attacking the pawn. e6 finally comes, f6 because of course this is the best move, bishop to f5 playing against the pin, and here comes a terrible mistake by Anand. Anand captures with the queen on b2, the queen is also attacking d2, but white now can win the game. The simple bishop to f4 is already winning because black must lose a tempo playing king to g7. Here comes bishop to e4 attacking the rook, and this maneuver wins the quality. The best move is queen to b5 because rook in a goes to c8 doesn't work. Rook to b1 attacking the queen must leave the b file, queen to a2, now rook to b7 is a winning fork. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back to our game. After queen captures on b2, instead of bishop to f4, Caruana finds a move even better. He continues with rook to c2, attacking the queen, supported by the bishop. Queen back to b8 against white queen. Bishop to f4 now. Queen to b4 attacking the rook, and the beautiful move, bishop captures on g6. Anand captures the rook with check, king to h2, and because h captures on g6 doesn't work because this is already a forced checkmate, here comes queen captures on g6 with check, king to h8 forced move because to f8 is checkmating 1. Now queen to h5 with check, king to g8, queen to f7 with check, king to h8, queen capture, rook to g8, because if rook to f8, bishop to h6 will come and the rook must move anyway. Also the rook on g8 is protecting g7, but here the queen captures on f6 with check, the rook must interpose, bishop to h6, the second rook comes to g8 to protect the rook, rook captures on c5, queen to e4, bishop captures, rook captures, but there is no solution to rook to g5, even if the queen moves back to h7, here comes e7 and e8. So after king to h2, because it's not possible to capture the bishop with the pawn, Anand plays rook to d5. This position, rook to c1 against the queen, and Anand plays rook to g5 attacking both white queen and the bishop. This is the critical moment of the game. The position is completely lost for black, it's plus 12. The only problem is that Caruana has only 4 minutes on the clock, while Anand 14 minutes, but 4 minutes should be enough to find the simple winning move. Let's watch the winning move. Bishop to a7 with check is the winning move. The king must move to h8. Now the rook is lost, bishop captures on g5, the black queen is still under attack, and then bishop to h6 with the checkmate threat on g7 is coming. So queen to e5 to save the queen, and the simple queen exchange, queen captures, f captures, the bishop is lost, bishop captures on e7, white is a piece up, the c pawn is falling, and the e6 pawn is really advanced. So it's something like plus 15. But Caruana doesn't find bishop to a7 with check. After rook to g5, he continues with queen to f3, and this blunder complicates the game. Of course, the queen is attacking the rook. Anand plays queen captures on e6 to save the queen. Now queen captures on e8 with check, king to g7, and this is another mistake. Bishop to d3. The bishop should move to e4 because with bishop to d3, Anand can play queen to d5, attacking the queen and threatening checkmating 1 on g2. So Anand is able to exchange the queens. Queen captures on g5, rook captures on d5, and the rook is safe. Now, after bishop captures on a6, we are in a complex endgame and Caruana only has 2 minutes on the clock. c4 with the discovered attack, bishop captures on c4 and rook captures on a5. There is still some advantage for white, a better pawn structure and the bishop pair. The only good element in black's position is the pass pawn on d4. Bishop to d3, a good move to block the pawn, knight to b5, and rook to c6. This is another inaccuracy. Rook to e1 is the move to play, but now it's a blitz game, and with a complex endgame like this one, precision goes on vacation. Now let's briefly watch the next moves. Knight to c3, g4, knight to d5 against the bishop, bishop to d6, rook to a7, bishop to e4 against the knight, rook to d7, bishop back to g3, knight to b4 against the rook, rook to c1 and d3. Now this pass pawn is becoming a real problem. The game is completely equal. Bishop to f5 against the rook, d2 now, rook to d1 and rook to d4, controlling f4 so that the bishop can't attack the pawn. f4 now, knight to a2, the idea of course is to jump to c3. So bishop to f2, which not with check, but attacking the rook, rook back to d8 and bishop to e3. Bishop to b4 is another protection to the pawn, and here Caruana moves the king to catch the pawn. Knight to c1, controlling both e2 so that the king can't move near the pawn, and also d3. King to f3 and knight to b3. Bishop to c2 against the knight. This is another inaccuracy because with the knight fork, knight to d4 we check, Caruana is forced to change the bishop on the knight and nothing can capture this pawn. Bishop captures on d4, the rook recapture and king to e3 against the rook. Rook to c4 against the bishop, bishop to d3 and rook to c1, of course attacking the rook, and of course the rook can't capture. Caruana makes another little inaccuracy, king to e2 protecting the rook, but in this endgame the king is stronger than the bishop, so bishop to e2 protecting the rook is better so that the king is free to move, while now the king must stay near the rook to protect it. h5 now, bishop to f5 is the best move, Caruana captures with the pawn and king to h6. Bishop to g6 protecting h6, bishop to a5 and bishop to e8. Rook to c7, bishop back to g6, rook to e7 we check and king to d3. Again rook to d1 against the rook, so that the king must go back and protect the rook. Rook to e3 against the h3 pawn, h4, rook to e1 and bishop to f7. Now 5 minutes on the clock for Anand, less than 30 seconds for Caruana. Stockfish gives an advantage to black. It seems that the variation that I'm going to show you will bring white in Zugzwang. Let's watch it together. Anand continues with king to g7, attacking the bishop that will move back. But if we go back one move, Stockfish suggests rook to e4 against the pawn, f5 and rook back to e1. Bishop back to g6, rook to e3, and the bishop moves up and down. Rook to c3 we check. Of course the king can't capture the pawn because there is the discovery. So king to b2, rook to c5 against f5 and bishop to g6 protecting everything. Rook to c4 against h4, bishop to f7, rook capture and bishop back to g6. Rook to b4 we check, king to c2, rook to e4, now the rook is on the important e file again, bishop to f7, rook to e1, the bishop moves back, and now with king to g7, the bishop can't move again. The only move is h6, we check, but after king captures on h6, advancing the king, black should be able to win this endgame. Of course, Anand doesn't find this almost impossible maneuver, and after bishop to a7, he continues with king to g7, bishop back to g6, bishop to b4, bishop back to d3, rook to e3. Finally, this rook can move to b1 with tempo, rook to e1, and after rook to d1 again, the players agree to a draw. So Caruana threw away another important game. Later he was able to win the Armageddon against Anand, but he's not playing well in this tournament. So what do you think about the game? If I missed something important, feel free to comment and let me know so we can learn together new things. I hope that you enjoyed the game. If you did, please don't forget to like the video and to subscribe to the channel because many more great games are coming. For now, thank you very much for watching and see you tomorrow. Goodbye.